Okay, I don't know why I'm not supposed to look up. I'm gonna look anyway. Oh, so that's why. Okay, I'm not looking up. You got me, Netflix. What's going on, everyone? James here with another real review, and man, oh man, is it good to be back. I've been away just for a few days because I've been a little under the weather, but I'm back to talk about Netflix's Don't Look Up, a film written and directed by Adam McKay. You probably know him from Anchorman and The Big Short and Vice, but he's back with another pretty sharp social bit of commentary on a topic that can hit a little close to home. And the reason I say that is because this movie is about two astronomers that have to go on a giant media tour to warn mankind of an approaching comet that will destroy planet Earth. And the way he goes about it, sometimes very effective, sometimes not, but it's this cast that really got me into it because it stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Rob Morgan, Meryl Streep, and so many more. A huge thank you to Netflix for giving me the chance to watch this in theaters, and you can too because it is now in theaters, but it does hit Netflix on December 24th. What better way to spend Christmas Eve? Some holiday cheer about the world's impending doom. Now guys, before we get into my review and I tell you what really worked about Don't Look Up and what didn't really hit the mark for me, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I talk about movies like this all the time, so you're not going to want to miss out. Go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on that bell, and hit the thumbs up button if you are a big fan of movies just like me. And hey, get loud down below and let me know what's your favorite Adam McKay movie, and which actor in this film is your favorite, because there's a lot to choose from, but I got my pick. Alrighty guys, let's get into the movie now and talk about the positives, because we're going to start out on an optimistic note here. As with most Adam McKay movies, this one had me in stitches at times. I laughed so hard in the first half of this movie, and it's not just because of the really good writing here at times. I really think it's because of the cast and this comedic delivery that each of them have. Leonardo DiCaprio has this very awkward but effective approach that sometimes made me feel so awkward that I couldn't help but laugh. And if you're wondering, yes, he goes full Leonardo DiCaprio at this very crucial moment in the film, and I found it to be shocking, but in a good way, because I was wondering if he would get there. And yes, there are moments of his brilliance that shine through in the more dramatic sense, because this movie does juggle both tones, comedy and drama. We'll touch on that later, but yes, Leo is a great fit here as one of the lead astronomers. But he's not alone, guys. Jennifer Lawrence plays a grad student that is working with Leonardo DiCaprio here, and she's actually the astronomer that discovers the comet. That sets up for some very funny jokes later on in the film that are also very dour and sad. But man, when it comes to Jennifer Lawrence's performance, to me, I think she gave the strongest performance of the movie because of how emotionally layered her character is, and they gave her character more of an arc than some of the other co-stars that she's paired up here in this movie. My favorite pairing with her, though, has to be with Timothée Chalamet's character Yule, I believe his name is. I mean, yes, he doesn't get a lot of screen time, but I just felt like both of them played off of each other very well. And there's enough nuance between both of them that made me kind of want them more often in this movie. It's a shame we only got them like very little in that third act. I wanted more from both of these characters. But again, I guess that's just the way that the cookie crumbles or the comet crashes down into the earth. Alright, I gotta stop with these dark metaphors. And before we move on to my favorite performance in this movie, I gotta shout out Mark Rylance, who plays a tech leader and CEO that is basically impersonating Apple's chief. Guys, he's hilarious here. There's this moment in the first half where he gets introduced, and I believe he's speaking in front of a crowd, and I'm not gonna lie to you, one, I didn't expect the voice he was gonna use here, and two, I might have been the only one literally almost falling out of my seat in my press screening. The voice was so funny to me, and I actually thought Mark Rylance delivers, it's like he's trying to not be funny, and it just works. You can tell he's not being over the top, he's just playing a very monotone character, but it's just the way he just, all of his mannerisms, it just comes together. Now, do they overuse him a little bit too much in the second half? Yes, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. but I thought Mark Rylance was one of the characters that provided some of the more memorable scenes in this movie because of how hard I was laughing at him. Alrighty, so while I just said Jennifer Lawrence gave what I thought was the best performance, my favorite was from Rob Morgan, who sometimes has this deadpan delivery that nearly made me spit out my food. I actually thought that he was underused in this movie, and he is more of the straight man, and he's playing it cool, but I loved his character. I just thought that every time Rob Morgan was on screen, everyone else just got insanely better. He is just so good in this movie, and it's a shame we don't get too much of him. And if anything, one of the things I don't like is that the movie pulls away from his character as we get deeper into the film. It just starts focusing a lot on Leo, a lot on Jennifer Lawrence, but not enough on Rob Morgan, who really is a part of that core group in the first, hour of the movie. But outside of Adam McKay in this cast bringing the laughs, I think there's a dramatic element that works here too, even if it isn't fully realized. I was seriously terrified at times when it comes to the more serious angles in this movie, where you start to see the terror and the panic on the people's face and how everyone really is starting to prepare for an apocalyptic event on Earth, and it is scary sometimes because of how real it felt. I know it's a fictional story, guys, but society might actually react just like this if astronomers were to warn the planet of impending doom. There's a news segment that they kind of use pretty often here with Tyler Perry and Cate Blanchett as the host, and man, no one was watching that for the actual facts that the Earth is going to crumble. Instead, they were watching it because of this fascination with Leonardo DiCaprio's character and his handsome looks as an astronomer. It's a running joke, but honestly, a lot of society might just react like that if they heard this news. And when it comes to society, let's dive into the social commentary a little bit because it's laid on pretty thick in this movie. Meryl Streep plays the President of the United States here, and Jonah Hill is the President's Chief of Staff, but I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it's pretty clear what Adam McKay's trying to do here. Meryl Streep is basically the version of Trump in this movie, and Trump is the former President of the United States. I don't want to think too much about that guy, but I will tell you that Meryl Streep, even though she doesn't deliver a great performance, it's good enough, it's serviceable. It's not necessarily the most memorable thing about this movie, but the clear bits of social commentary come from when we spend time with Meryl Streep's character. But back to the dramatic elements of this story, you guys. In the second half, I will tell you that I was actually less interested in the comedy and more interested in the apocalyptic scenario at hand. It was pretty engaging and I was really glued to the screen. I kind of wish they went in that direction more often in the second half than really trying to sprinkle in these weird jokes and sometimes using running jokes from the first hour of the film. I thought that was maybe a little unnecessary. I just really liked the dramatic angle here. I just kind of wish they stuck the landing a little bit better. Alrighty guys, so now let's get into what I didn't like too much about Don't Look Up. And while I found myself laughing a lot early on, and the acting was pretty darn solid from our leads, I'll be honest with you guys, Don't Look Up begins to lose momentum in the second half. And it really does start with the over-reliance on two things. One, some of these jokes, they just don't work, y'all. And two, the social commentary begins to get a little bit too on the nose. And I also think the movie gets a little too cute for its own good, and not in a good way. We get this overly long concert sequence, for example, with Ariana Grande's character, who's a famous pop star, and she's singing alongside a DJ played by Kid Cudi. Listen, the film was getting into a groove, a pretty nice groove up until this point, and then we get the concert sequence, and I was hoping that it maybe would only be about 20 seconds, 30 seconds, but it was a lot longer than it needed to be, and then it just kept going, and I had to really look at my watch and think, why are we spending so much time on this concert sequence? It just stops the film dead in its tracks. I didn't laugh one time, and it really pulled me out of the film, which is probably the opposite effect it intended to have. And some of these cameos outside of Ariana Grande and Kid Cudi that we just talked about, because I didn't really care for their cameos too much, were pretty darn bad, and that also includes Ron Perlman's character, who a lot of people in my theater were laughing at, but I didn't find very funny at all. He's vulgar, he's racist, he's rude, and he's a former mercenary. So there are elements there where I thought, okay, I can see why Adam McKay wrote this character into the story to service literally one scene in the film, but even then, I never found it to be very effective. And while I love Tyler Perry and Cate Blanchett, their new segments were probably better off in smaller doses because we just get simply too much of them. We even get some of them in the end of the film, and I'm like, is it necessary? Like, they're not main characters here. I just feel like at that point it was the movie running out of steam and just trying to say, remember what made you laugh a little bit in the beginning? And that's never a good sign when it comes to a comedy film. But I'll be honest with you, while they're both great actors, I just don't think that they worked for as many scenes as we got them in. It was just maybe a little bit too repetitive. And that's probably one of the film's biggest issues, guys. There's just not enough restraint. What was funny once isn't funny 2 or 3 more times, sadly. And I go back to the Mark Rylance example. He's hilarious in the first hour of this movie, and then we get him again and again and again with the same voice, the same cadence, and it's like, now you're ruining all of that goodwill you just bought from me in the first half of this film. So Adam McKay just kind of runs out of room and tries to fill things in, but the filler is definitely noticeable for me. And then there's also an issue I have with the technical aspects of this movie. The editing is too frantic, you guys, way too frantic. I feel like the movie kept cutting in between to animals, nature shots, society, and I'm like, okay, I kind of get what Adam McKay is going for here, but it's not enough for me to say that it serves the movie very well. I mean, I kept thinking to myself, why aren't we just getting establishing shots here? Why do we need these weird transitions where we're seeing things like that are stripped straight from a National Geographic documentary? It's kind of odd. So not only did the editing not help this feel like a more cohesive experience, I do have to make a comment about the score. Now listen, I love Nicholas Britell. He is one of the top tier composers of my lifetime, and he's done excellent things. But his score here for Don't Look Up was probably one of the rare times I'll tell you that he missed. And I hate to say that because it's very rare that I'll ever mention this, but man, it's just a really forgettable score to me, and I couldn't come away and tell you I remember even one memorable scene that was memorable because of the score. And since this is a spoiler-free review, I won't say much about the ending, but let me just sum it up in one word: anticlimactic. It was handled pretty darn poorly, and I felt that the best way to do it would be to focus on our main characters. Focus on the cast, the squad that you assembled up to this point in the movie, but instead, you keep breaking away, you keep adding weird effects on screen, and there really are some questionable creative decisions at the end there too. Yes, there's a mid-credits scene that you might want to stick around for if you really enjoyed this, but if you missed it, it's not the worst thing in the world. I just really don't understand some of the decisions made at the end there, and it did kind of bring down my overall experience. So guys, what the heck are my overall thoughts for Don't Look Up? Well, I'll tell you, it's not a terrible movie. It's really not the worst movie I've seen all year, and it really isn't a bad comedy film. However, it tries to be two things, and it never really is great at either of them, being a comedy film and being a drama. Now, if it was just trying to be a comedy, I think it would have knocked it out of the park, because then you don't have to deal with some of the dramatic elements, but the dramatic elements that were in this film, I liked actually a lot better than the comedy. So I almost kind of wish that Adam McKay switched it up a little bit and did a majority drama, minority comedy, but instead he tries to do both equally, and it never finds its footing for me. And I know this will sound harsh, but the more and more I think about Don't Look Up, the less and less I like this film. It's not going to be for everyone, and yes, it is maybe a little too long. It's almost 2 hours and 45 minutes, I believe. I'm not the biggest fan of comedies that even last that long, because you run into some redundant jokes, which you do find here, but I'll tell you that Leo, Jennifer Lawrence, Rob Morgan, heck, even Timothée Chalamet, guys, they were all pretty darn good in this movie. It's just everyone else doesn't really always get the same treatment when it comes to the source material and the jokes and the punchlines. Cate Blanchett does her darnest in this movie, but even then, that subplot was a little distracting and never really worked all the way for me. So Don't Look Up, for me, is one of these movies you throw up on a weekend and you're probably not going to hate it. But I will tell you that I don't think it's going to be one of the top tier films of this year. And will it get nominated for some awards? I think so. But I just don't think it's going to be that Oscar darling that a lot of people predicted it would be. So Don't Look Up, if I had to rate it, would probably be a 3.5 out of 5. When I walked out of the theater, it was a 4. I let it marinate, and I kind of just knocked it down a little bit, just because, again, there are some questionable decisions at the end, and there are a lot of moments here where jokes are supposed to make me laugh, and they just really didn't. So if a comedy movie can't make you laugh sometimes, yeah, it's not doing the best job, is it? But hey guys, Don't Look Up, again, isn't bad. It's just not as good as it should have been, and that's probably why I get a lot of disappointment whenever I talk about this film. But there you have it. That's my real review of Don't Look Up. Again, it's in select theaters now and will be on Netflix December 24th. When you see it, go ahead and let me know down below in the comments what you thought. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Are you kind of in the middle? And if you haven't already, hit the big red button below. Subscribe to the channel. If you don't, you're getting coal in your stocking this year. I'm just kidding. No, that's not gonna happen. But hey, seriously, if you subscribe, I'll love ya, and hit the thumbs up button and tap on that bell, because this week, guys, we got Spider-Man No Way Home. I'll be dropping my spoiler-free video, and maybe we'll do a spoiler discussion, because how am I gonna dance around this one, guys? Alrighty, y'all. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening. And no, I'm not looking up again. Not if that guy's up there.